Alright, first thing we're going to do when we approach the front of the truck, we're going to look underneath, check for any colored fluids. We're going to check for any leaks under the truck.
Yep.
Okay, that's none. We're going to make sure the bumper is secured to the truck. It's level, it's not leaning to one side.
Okay.
After that, we're going to check our headlights. Make sure the headlights are not cracked or damaged, that they're clear and white in color. After that, we're going to check our turn signals and our hazards. Make sure that they're not cracked, missing, or broken. Make sure that our clearance lights on top of the truck are not cracked, missing, or broken, and that our lights are amber. All right, after that, we're going to pop the hood. All right, let's go over to the passenger side. Start with our coolant reservoir. Make sure the coolant reservoir is secured to the truck. It's not damaged, that there's no leaks. Checking our fluid level. Check the sight glass. Make sure the fluid's above the add line. Check our cap, make sure it's on tight. Checking all of our hoses, make sure the hoses are secure to the reservoir, they're not cut, leaking, or damaged. You follow this hose down, it goes to your water pump. Make sure the water pump is secured to the truck, it's not damaged, it's not leaking. After that, we're going to check our alternator. Make sure the alternator is secured to the truck, it's not damaged. Check the wire, make sure it's connected properly and there's no damaged or exposed wires. We're going to check the belt on the front, make sure the belt is not frayed or damaged and it can't move more than 3/4 of an inch. After that, we're going to go to the driver's side. We're going to check our oil level. We're going to make sure the dipstick, the level on the dipstick is above the add mark. After that, we're going to come down to our air compressor. Make sure it's secured to the truck, that it's not damaged, there's no missing bolts. Check our hoses. Make sure the hoses are not cut, leaking, or damaged. And this air compressor is gear driven. We're going to check our power steering reservoir, make sure it's secured to the truck, it's not damaged. We're going to check the cap, make sure the cap is on tight, it's not leaking. We're going to check the fluid level again. Make sure the fluid level is above the add mark. We're going to check all the hoses coming off of it, make sure that they're not cut, leaking, or damaged. If you follow this hose back to this back side, our power steering pump is underneath the air compressor. Make sure that the power steering pump is not damaged, it's not leaking. All the hoses are connected properly and it's also gear driven. We're going to check our steering column. Make sure the steering column is secured to the truck. It's straight, not bent or damaged. It's connected properly to our steering box. Make sure the steering box is secured to the truck. We're not missing any of the bolts. Check all of our hoses. Make sure they're connected properly, not cut, leaking, or damaged. This is our pitman arm. Make sure the pitman arm is straight, not bent or broken, not missing the castle nut or cotter pin. After that, we're going to check our steering assembly. That's going to be our drag link, our knuckle, and then our tie rod. Make sure that they're not bent, broken, or damaged, and that the cotter pins and the castle nuts are in place, not missing. After that, we're going to check our suspension. We start with our mounts. We got one here, one in the back. Can't really see it. We're going to check the mounts, make sure that they're secured to the truck. They're not missing any of the bolts. Checking all of the leaf springs. Make sure the leaf springs are not shifted, missing, or damaged. Check the 2 U-bolts. Make sure that they're in place. They're not damaged. They're not missing the bolts. Checking our shock. Make sure the shock is secured to the truck. It's not damaged. It's not bent. And there's no leaks. After that, we're going to check our brake system. We're going to check our airline. Make sure the airline is not cut, leaking, or damaged, and that the airline is connected properly to our air chamber. Make sure the air chamber is secured to the truck. It's not missing any of the bolts. It's not leaking air. After that, we're going to check our slack adjuster and then our push rod. Slack adjuster goes down, push rod goes into the chamber. Make sure that the slack adjuster and push rod are not bent, broken, or damaged, and the slack adjuster can't move more than 1 inch by hand. After that, we're going to check our brake drums and shoes on the inside and make sure that they're not overly worn, there's no heat cracks, and that they're dry. After that, we'll move over to our tire. Make sure the top of the tire wears evenly. The tread depth is not less than 4/32. We're going to check our sidewalls for any rips, tears, or cuts, or ABCs, abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. Then we're also going to check our tire pressure with a tire gauge. After that, we're going to check our rim, check for any bends or cracks or any illegal welds, non-factory welds. We're going to check all of our lug nuts, make sure all the lug nuts are there, they're not missing, and there's no shiny threads or rust trails that indicate that they're loose. We're also going to check around the hub, make sure we're not missing any bolts. Check the hub seal, make sure the hub seal is not damaged or leaking. And we want to make sure that the oil level is above the add mark. We have proper fluid level. Alright, on the side of the truck, we're going to start with our mirror mount. We're gonna make sure the mirror is secured to the door. We're gonna make sure it's not damaged, no missing bolts. We're gonna check our door, make sure the door opens properly. We're gonna check the seal on the inside, make sure the seal is not damaged or missing. We also wanna check our hinges. We got hinges here. You see one from the outside and make sure that it's secured to the truck. The door's not just hanging off. You also wanna make sure your door closes properly. You wanna check your steps. Make sure the steps are secured to the truck. They're not damaged, there's no missing bolts. There's no obstructions. We're gonna check our fuel tank. Make sure the fuel tank is secured to the truck. We're not missing our straps. We're not missing the rubber in between the straps. That way we don't have metal rubbing on metal. We're gonna check our fuel cap, make sure it's on tight and it's not leaking. After that, we're gonna check our catwalk. Make sure our catwalk is secured to the truck. They're not damaged, not missing any of the bolts, and there's no obstructions. We're gonna check our frame. Make sure the frame is not damaged. There's no missing bolts, no illegal welds. We're gonna check our cross members. There's one here, there's one right up under here, and then there's one right under here in the back. Same thing, make sure they're not damaged, no missing bolts, no illegal welds. We're gonna check our drive shaft right here in the middle. We're gonna make sure the drive shaft is secured to the truck. It's not bent or broken, that our U-joints are connected properly and properly greased. Over there on the far side is our muffler. On our test truck, it's a stack. We're gonna make sure that the muffler is secured to the truck. It's not damaged and there's no leaks into the cab. All right, after that, I will go ahead and check the air lines and electrical lines. The blue's gonna be your service. The red's gonna be your emergency. This one's your electric. For the service and emergency lines, you wanna make sure they're both connected properly from the truck to the trailer. You wanna make sure the glad hands are secured. Make sure the glad hand seals, make sure they're not worn out. You also want to check the hoses, make sure the hoses are not cut, leaking, or damaged, not leaking air.
Service, emergency.
Nope, blue is service, red is emergency. This one's your electrical.
Electrical.
All right, we're going to check our electrical line, make sure it's connected properly from the truck to the trailer. You want to make sure it's got a good seal, that way no moisture gets in. All right, you also want to check the line itself, make sure that there's no exposed or damaged wires. You want to do an overall check of your lines, make sure that they're long enough you can make a turn, but they're not going to get tangled, they're not going to get caught on the frame. All right, after that, let's move up underneath. I'm going to start with our fifth wheel and our apron. The bottom of the trailer is called the apron. You want to check to make sure that the apron sits properly on the fifth wheel skid plate. You want to make sure that there's no gaps and that the fifth wheel is properly greased. You want to check the skid plate, make sure it's not damaged. You want to make sure it's mounted to the platform, which is that kind of triangular part. You want to make sure the platform is not damaged, mounted to the frame, not missing our mounting bolts. That release handle, you want to make sure it's all the way in, which that's what's connected to the locking jaw. You want to make sure the locking jaw is secured around the kingpin, and the locking jaws and kingpin are not bent, broken, or damaged. After that, we're going to move down, check our brakes, our suspension, and our tires again. On the brakes, we're going to check our air lines again. Make sure the air lines are not cut, leaking, or damaged. Make sure they're connected to our air chamber. Make sure the air chamber is secured to the truck. No missing bolts, it's not leaking air. You also want to check your slack adjuster and your push rod again. Make sure they're not bent, broken, or damaged. And the slack adjuster can't move more than 1 inch. You want to check your brake drums and shoes one more time. Make sure that they're not overly worn, there's no heat cracks, and that they're dry. We're going to check our mounts on our suspension. We'll make sure that we're not missing any bolts, that they're not damaged. We're going to check our leaf springs. Make sure the leaf springs are not shifted, missing, or damaged. And if you look back here again, you'll see the 2 U-bolts. Make sure that they're in place, they're not damaged, and that they're tight. Down there at the bottom, it looks like the leaf spring by itself. Make sure that's your torsion bar. Make sure the torsion bar is not bent, broken, or damaged. After that, we're going to move over to our tires. You're going to check both tires to make sure they're both wearing evenly across the top. You want to make sure the tread depth is not less than 230 seconds. 230 seconds. The way you can remember that is because we got 2 tires. You want to check the spacing in between. Make sure the tires are not rubbing and there's no debris in between the tires. You want to check your sidewalls. Make sure the sidewalls have no rips, tears, or cuts. You want to check your tire pressure with a tire gauge. You want to check your rim. Make sure the rim is not bent or cracked. There's no illegal welds. You want to check all your lug nuts. Make sure that they're all there. There's no shiny threads or rust trails that indicate that they're loose. You want to check around your hub again. Make sure all the bolts are there. Make sure the seal is not damaged or leaking, and that we have proper fluid level in the hub. After that, we check our mud flap, make sure the mud flap is secured to the truck, it's not dragging the ground. On our rear light, we make sure that it's not cracked, missing, or broken, that it's red. Alright, we're going to come to the front of the trailer. This is called your headboard. We're going to check the headboard and make sure it's not damaged. Checking all of our rivets and our panels. Make sure there's no spaces in between our panels. Make sure we're not missing any panels or rivets. We're going to check our clearance lights up top. Make sure they're not cracked, missing, or broken, and that they're amber in color. We also want to make sure that the headboard can support the load. If we slam on brakes, everything comes flying forward. We want to make sure the front of the trailer is going to be able to hold it. We're going to check the side of the trailer. We're going to check the panels and rivets again. Make sure there's not missing or damaged, no spaces in between the panels. We're going to check our reflector tape going down the side of the trailer, make sure it's not missing or damaged. Check our lights again. We're going to check our clearance lights across the top, and then our running light down here at the bottom. Make sure it's not cracked, missing, or broken, that it's amber in color. We're going to come right over here, check our landing gear. Make sure the landing gear is secured to the trailer, no missing bolts. Make sure the landing gear at the feet are all the way up. Make sure our handle is secured in the cradle.
So 1 foot all the way up?
No, the feet, both feet.
Oh, both
landing
feet.
gear
Okay.
feet. Yeah, make sure they're all the way up. After that, you can see where these rivets are. That's your cross members here on the trailer. You want to make sure your cross members are not damaged or missing any bolts. No illegal welds. After that, we're going to come back here to this axle. You want to check your brake, suspension, and tires again. You're going to check here, make sure that your air lines are not cut, leaking, or damaged. You want to make sure that they're connected to your air chamber. Air chamber's not leaking, not damaged, not missing any bolts. Slack adjuster and push rod are not bent, broken, or damaged. And that slack adjuster can't move more than 1 inch. Make sure the brake drums and shoes are not overly worn, no heat cracks, and that they're dry. Checking our suspension. Checking our mounts, make sure the mounts are secured to the trailer. They're not damaged, not missing any bolts. Check the leaf springs, make sure they're not shifted, missing, or damaged. Make sure your bolts are in place, not missing, and that they're tight. That bottom bar down there, that's our torsion bar again. Make sure it's not bent, broken, or damaged. Checking our tires now, same thing as up here. Make sure it wears evenly across the top. It's not less than 2/32 tread depth. Check the space for any debris, make sure the tire's not rubbing. Make sure the sidewalls have no rips, tears, or cuts. Make sure our tire pressure is what the manufacturer's specs say. Checking our rim for any bends, cracks, illegal welds, any kind of damage. Checking our lug nuts, make sure they're all there. There's no shiny threads or rust trails to indicate that they're loose. We're going to check around the hub, make sure we're not missing any of the bolts. Check the hub seal, make sure it's not leaking or damaged. Make sure we have proper fluid level in the hub. Checking our mud flap, we'll make sure it's secured to the trailer. It's not dragging the ground. We're going to move around to the back. We're going to check our door. We're going to make sure the door opens and closes properly. That locks in place. Check our panels and rivets on the door. Make sure none of the panels are damaged, none of the rivets are missing. If we had swing door, we'd check the hinges, make sure the hinges are not missing or damaged, that the doors are not just hanging off. Alright, we're going to check our lights. We're going to start with our clearance lights. We're going to check our running lights, our brake lights, both of our turn signals, and our hazard lights, or 4-ways. Make sure they're not cracked, missing, or broken, and that they're red in color. We also want to check our bumper. Make sure we have our DOT tape on it. That's it.
Okay.
All right.